Brody, are you gonna have anything under other business? So it's just update on the land use permits thing.
I'm gonna check my text filter because I
Do you have any extra property?
has been.
Yeah, 14 years later.
You know, I hate to say this, but Aaron could probably just as easily, I hope he shows up, easily participate virtually. I mean, everyone's getting so used to this now. I hated it, but now it kind of is okay.
I still think it's important as the process is that he needs to be here.
Yeah,
There's something about that commitment to talking and seeing and.
Well, particularly now if they're blaming
Just
him
one.
for, you know,
Yeah, the one that they,
the secret plan.
yeah, the one they,
Defend him a little bit. because
the one they skipped.
No, I
It's gonna
agree.
be a long
It's honest
conversation.
effort.
And, you know, just,
To
he
play
can
by
come in and do, he can walk the Perrysburg walk and talk to Perrysburg because he's a lifer here. And
I can tell you that when I passed the feedback on him, he was genuinely shocked. He's like, this accomplishes exactly what they want.
that it wasn't exactly what they wanted.
But we still.
Accomplishes what they do. So he's a interpretation of the plan that they do, of the same document. So, wow, we'll talk to them.
Okay. All right, land use permits. When we left this last month, we were kind of noodling about it. And I think we were gonna try and get some follow-up with the county. What if anything were we able to find out?
What we determined was that, so I'll kind of recap the facts as they exist. We have extra virgin food services, we have super suppers, and we have 7 Little Cupcakes that are all located in Fort Meigs Business Park.
Yep.
They exist in Fort Meigs Business Park without the land use permit. The land use permit is the first checkpoint for a business to have the confidence through the actual issues of the permit that they are legally allowed to be there in terms of zoning categories and zoning districts. So we determined that there's these 3 businesses, all have to be owned by the same owner. The question or the homework that you left us with last time was to determine whether Wood County Building Inspection had indeed issued a permit for them to do some interior work or if they had not. We did find out through research that Wood County Building Inspection did issue a permit to do interior work, including fire alarm work. That was done improperly with the arrangement or the agreement that we have with Wood County. Wood County, they were brought in since then, reminded of their obligation to ensure that they have what I jokingly refer to as the permission slip from the city. It takes the form of either the use permit or the zoning permit. It can be one of 2 forms. They acknowledged that perhaps the ball was dropped on their end, that they represent many jurisdictions and sometimes things get lost because each jurisdiction can give them different requirements and things that they need. They have told me that they develop a checklist for the city of Perrysburg to make sure that we get it right most of the time.
Mhm.
This wasn't one of those times. So I guess where we're at with that is we have these businesses that continue to exist in conflict with the zoning code. There is also a violation of the state fire code in these businesses, and it's a secondary offense to a violation of the zoning code. So the state fire code says that essentially you have to be square and legitimate with every other permitting requirement that the city has.
Oh, I see.
So by default in being in default of a planning and zoning obligation puts them in a violation of the state fire code.
Yeah, okay.
Of 2 planning and zoning violations.
Correct. Yes.
Because I also did not go and get a sign permit.
And as I was saying, the land use permit is the first checkpoint for a business to check in and say, can I even be here? The safety net to that is businesses will typically come in if they're not aware of that requirement, which you have an obligation to self-inform on certain things, would be the sign permit. If they would come in for a sign permit, we could have said, oh, and by the way, we don't have the paperwork on file of the use permit, because we do signs and use permits very frequently together.
Sure.
Because that's our second safety net. We would have brought to their attention, this isn't a permitted use before considerable construction and build out had happened on the interior of that. So the position that we're currently have been, and I guess our current position is that we have 3 businesses in violation of planning and zoning code. While we've talked about, some members I think of this committee have said, well, it's a benign use, why do we care? I think I brought to light some of those points as to why we do care. There's some equity issues there. And I think we've kind of examined those. Our position is that we need to deal with this in one way or another. And I had mentioned before that simply ignoring this issue is not an appropriate solution. We either need to uphold the zoning chart here, because it's a unique issue, because it's a zoning 101 issue. It's the foundational issue of zoning. We need to uphold the code as it's currently written, or there needs to be a code change, and there's other implications of doing that, of allowing takeout restaurant business to be located in a business park. There's also cons associated with that.
That gets back to your equity issue.
Right. But we can't simply defer enforcement. We can't simply pretend that they don't exist. Say, well, from here on out, you've got to do the right thing. We need to put the issue to bed one way or another, and there's appropriate ways to do that, and there's inappropriate ways to do that. So hopefully we can sort that out, figure out, take the left fork in the road or the right fork in the road.
Well, I agree. I mean, I was interested in what happened with the county, just because as you described the process before. You said the county usually gets it right, but you told us last time, but they don't always. And I was just interested in the checks and balances. And I have had a suspicion, if you'd call it that, well, I'd say more a concern, that if this business owner ignored our land use permits process, did he also ignore Wood County? And I just want to get a sense of what we're dealing with here. He didn't do that. I'm happy to hear that, but I don't see anything further we can do now. You have a zoning violation, and I guess you got to go enforce it. And I don't see an alternative to that. I don't know how either of you feel about that. I know.
As Brody mentioned, the only other thing you could do is look at this table, but again, that could be opening up a door that we didn't want to open as well, if you want to permit certain new uses in business parks, because you do create an equity issue. There's also the traffic issue that typically business parks aren't necessarily designed with a parking lot set up for a lot of in and out movements. It's usually you come in, you park, you're there for the day, and you leave. So there might not be the right number of spaces. There might be traffic issues getting in and out depending on the road it's located on. So they're all things to consider.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not immediately inclined to look at those changes. I mean, I suppose this business owner could try that route. I mean, he can come in and ask us.
The owner of the business park, yes, could.
Allow us to do this, and we give it.
They could go through the process like the other gentleman's going through right now.
Yeah, but at this point, I mean, we had you had agreed to kind of stand down on enforcement for the time being until we dotted all I's and crossed all T's. I think we've done that. I don't see any reason to hold up further on enforcement. Corey Berry, I don't know if you have other thoughts.
I don't know how we can. I am curious though. It's my understanding he's had his kitchen there for more than 10 years.
There is one business that was the original business in that space. That is his catering business. Recently, he brought 2 new businesses to that location. That's That's where he didn't go back through the process to see if those businesses were permitted in that zoning, which they're not.
Was this use permit there 10 years ago?
I would have to defer to planning and zoning on that.
Because I'm
So a catering business or the, is it the manufacturing of food or
Food
packaging?
processing, yes.
That is permitted in that zoning. So his catering business is fine there. It's bringing in the two other businesses that are more of a retail establishment that is what's the triggering the nonconformance with the zoning code.
understood. I did not know that distinction.
Yes.
And I even briefly, last meeting, mentioned to Tim that it's not like he's out of options. He can technically take the carryout aspect to his business right here,
Yeah.
and they can just pick it up from here. There's nothing stopping him from keeping those spaces and doing strictly food processing with just moving the takeout business to a permissible location.
In fact, Seven Little Cupcakes used to exist in the Lamplight.
Yeah, I know, I remember.
And obviously, Super Suppers was an entirely standalone entity that we acquired.
Yeah, I mean, he'd have to do some business adjustments, that's his, because Lamplight closes at 2 or 3. He'd have to station someone there for Super Suppers till 5 or 6. But that's up to him to decide.
Precisely.
And apparently though, by bringing these two businesses in, Brody, that did trigger the need to get some clearance from Wood County. Must have had to install some additional equipment to
Yes.
do whatever he wanted to do. And
I'm going to go back. Do we have a land use permit for him, for the kitchen from 10 years ago?
We did not find anything. We don't
Because-
believe he went through that process back then
Because
at that location, but I don't know that we were aware of him at that location.
I have heard that the reason he went to the county this second time was because he didn't have to go through the city the first time. Now, I don't know if that's factual, and that's why I wondered whether we had a use permit from 10 years ago. And I understand we don't.
We did look, we did not find it.
Oh, understood, yeah.
I
But that's
also-
why he went through the county the second time.
And I also don't know if Fort Meigs Business Park would have existed inside the city of Perrysburg at that time. There was annexations that were occurring in that time frame, because that was one of the first projects I worked on at the city. I'm not exactly sure of the timing, but there was fairly aggressive annexation going on. Epple Road, Grogan Drive, some areas on Fort Meigs Road, things were happening during that time. So it's possible that he was in an entirely different jurisdiction at that point as well. Certainly wasn't built in the city. You know that.
all right, well, I don't know, do you need anything further from us on that?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I
Well,
said I agree with you too.
okay.
I don't think I said anything, but I'm in agreement.
You just did. Brody tells me there's no other business, correct? All right, I guess we stand adjourned.
All right, thank you.
She's very excited.
I have to get a story on there by 10 minutes. They don't, so who can talk?
2.5 hours, I wasn't gonna miss the last 3 years. I was like,
It's like walking out the end of a movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although I will say I am one person.
Okay.
Don't hear that
Which
much.
I know how this is going. So, yeah,
I will be there.
That's all.
I can literally just set up right here. If that's okay.
yeah, that's how,
Yeah,
that
you
doesn't.
don't have to even move. I need to move anyway. It's freezing.
Hey, Victor, how are you?
Good.